Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic, hopefully. Today's story is that of Lord Lucan. Very, very British, this story, and very, very spicy. So let's go. Sin and Tonic! Right, the dog has made his bed. Do excuse if you hear the snoring. But let's go with our story. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Lord Lucan was born Richard John Bingham on the 18th of December in 1934. He was born into aristocracy. His father was the 6th Earl of Lucan, and he would then inherit this title when his father passed away, and he would become the 7th Earl of Lucan. Fancy is the word. Yes, old money. He attended Eton College, mediocre. He wasn't a very studious student, and he got a little taste for gambling. Yes. He was a character, Lucan, for sure. He liked to live it up. Gambling, money, lavish lifestyle, racing speedboats. Yeah, he liked a bit of that. He had an Aston Martin. Yeah, like a real... He was even considered for the role of James Bond. Get that? That's mad, isn't it? He is a looker. I think, I'll share a picture, but I think he looks like, oh Christ, Brad Pitt. I think he looks like Brad Pitt. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But I do think that he looks like Brad Pitt. I've said Brad Pitt so many times it feels weird. Brad Pitt, wiggity. Ooh, like being scouted for the role of James Bond. But he was kind of, forget the spy business, like, you know, the suave and the suits and the, you know, stuff like that. He was. And like he had an Aston Martin and speedboats and stuff. Like, come on. Fancy. In 1963, he would marry Veronica. They went on to have 3 children together, but sadly, in like 1972, the marriage just, it fell apart, and it was quite sad and quite bitter. They bought a house in Belgrave Street. Totally said that weirdly, don't know why, and I got it wrong. Lower Belgrave Street in Belgravia in London. Whoa. Now, I had a little searchy on Rightmove. Yes, I did, because I love houses. I like looking at floor plans, and I was like, oh, I want to see. It looks fancy. I bet it's fancy. Like, he's an aristocrat. Oh my. Like, yeah, we're talking like millions now. Like 5 million, 6 million, I think. Like, a lot of money. And they are beautiful. Beautiful. They don't have a garden now. But, you know. So, in 1972... he's off skis, he's moved out because it's all like falling apart. And this is when a very bitter custody battle would begin. He would spy on his wife. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, you know, like James Bond's spy. So spying does come into this story. He would have been a good James Bond. He would have actually, because I know the end of this story. Yes. It's all very Bondish. Oh. Moving on. He would record telephone conversations, he would spy, he even got private investigators and things like that, all different ones, to come and like prove that his wife was not all there and that she couldn't look after the children. So that was like his main purpose of all of this, was to like slander her character and prove that she wasn't right in the head and that she was not able to take care of their children so that he could have the children. However, this was like kind of dismissed, and there was a court battle and he lost. She was depressed, his wife. She would suffer with bouts of depression and, you know, it would sort of come and go. But she wasn't mentally ill, and she was capable as a mother to look after her children. So he was really cross about this because he'd spent a lot of money on a court case and it was completely for nothing. During all of this time, he's been gambling away, spending his money. I mean, he got a lot of money, not just from like one trust within his family, but like a few. He left his job at the bank, idiot, because he thought, I can make loads of money like gambling. I'm so good at it. But actually, no, love. No. Not sensible. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Something that I found fabulous was his daily routine. Let's go. His daily routine consisted of breakfast at 9 a.m. Lovely. coffee, swish, dealing with the morning's letters, reading the newspapers and playing the piano. That sounds like a fabulous morning, yes. Sometimes jogged in the park and took his Doberman Pinscher for walks. Get your exercise in, get your steps in. He would then lunch at the Claremont Club. Come on. Followed by afternoon games of backgammon, because he played that a lot as well for his, part of his gambling, backgammon. So he'd practice, I guess. So nice chilled day so far. Returning home to change into evening dress. And then he would typically spend the remainder of the day at the Claremont, gambling into the early hours, watched sometimes by Veronica, obviously before they separated. What a day. What a day. That's all he had to do with his day. That's fabulous. It's like just another world, isn't it? Another world. He also listed some desires, which I like too. Here we are. So he desired to have 2 million in the bank. And claimed that motor cars, yachts, expensive holidays and security for the future would give himself and a lot of other people a lot of pleasure. Yes, they would. He was popular, he was shy and quiet, but he was popular, and he was handsome, and he wasn't afraid to flash the cash either. He would like fly his friends across, to France or Russia, and they'd like drink vodka and stuff like that. Like he knew how to spend his money. He was all right at doing that. So Lucan has lost this court case and the custody battle with his wife, and he takes a very big downward spiral. Lots of drinking, lots of late night, lots of drugs as well, like pick-me-ups, things like that. A mess, a lot of gambling going on, really not taking care of himself at all. He had a few drunken conversations with friends at this point, and they were concerned about him, and they were worried about him, and they were worried about what he might do. I won't say any more than that because it's like spoiler alert, no. So we'll come back to that. He had a quite strict routine, if you can call it that, of being up really late into the early hours of the morning, like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, gambling, drinking, smoking. And then on the 7th of November in 1974, he completely flips the script and he decides to ring his solicitor at 10:30 in the morning. And this is unheard of. This is like super early for old Lord Lucan. He's normally in bed, sleeping or trying to. He arranged to meet his solicitor at 3 o'clock at the Claremont to have a spot to eat and a chat. However, he failed to appear for his lunch. At 4:45 on the 7th, he met with a literary agent and friend, Michael Hicksbeach, what a name, to discuss an article that he'd been asked to write about gambling, of all things, for the Oxford University magazine. He drove Michael Hicksbeach home at about 8 o'clock that evening, but not in his fancy schmancy Mercedes-Benz. Oh no! He drove him home in like an old Ford car that was all like beaten up, just like an old banger basically. I wonder why. He had borrowed this old banger from a friend a few weeks prior to this, Michael Stoop. Testing. He also made dinner arrangements with another friend and for like 11 o'clock that evening. What dinner? I mean, his clock is all over the place, but 11 o'clock? Oh, it's a late dinner, isn't it? No, thank you. He did not arrive or attend the 11 o'clock dinner reservation. So where was Lord Lucan? Let's rewind. 8:55 p.m. inside his old marital home at 46 Lower Belgrave Street, London, Belgravia. His wife was at home and so was the nanny, Sandra Rivett. Now, interestingly and tragically, Sandra was not meant to be at home that evening. She was their nanny at the time and she always had Thursday evenings off. Always. Apart from this week. Oh, it's just awful. At 8:55, she asked Lady Lucan, is that what she's called? I'm going to call her Veronica because I'm not sure she is Lady Lucan. Veronica She asked Veronica if she'd like a cup of tea. So the nanny, Sandra, she'd put the children to bed as she would normally when she was working, and then she made a cup of tea for Veronica. She went down to the basement kitchen, and at the bottom of the stairs, she was bludgeoned to death with a metal pipe. A very bloody, ferocious, horrible attack. Ugh. At the bottom of the stairs, the light bulb had been removed. So it was probably quite dark when she was going down, very low lighting. So that had been removed and it was put on a chair. And then she'd effectively been ambushed. It's just so sad. Her body had been placed in a canvas bag, like almost it's like a laundry bag, like a big laundry bag, and like really carelessly and chillingly, with like one arm still like kind of out of it. Oh, not great. Oh, it gave me chills when I saw that picture. Wondering where her bloody cup of tea was, I suppose, Veronica came to the top of the stairs going down to the basement, to the kitchen, to like, you know, where's my tea? Maybe she was very nice about it. Maybe she was stroppy. We don't know. We weren't there. But she was like, you know, the gist of it was like, where's the nanny? Where's my tea? You know, what's going on? And with that, Veronica is herself attacked. Now, this is where it gets spicy and it's like, you go, girl. Veronica, spicy mare, she put up a fight. And I think she had more of an awareness of what was about to happen to her than poor Sandra, who was effectively ambushed at the bottom of a dark staircase. Evil. Veronica, she screams and she's shouting and she's, you know, screaming for her life. And her attacker says, shut up. And with that, she knows instantly who it is. It's her husband. Ooh. So she says. They have like a brawl, basically. And in this fight, she manages to bite his fingers. Oh, I've got something on mine. What was that? I thought I was bleeding. Not to worry. She bites his fingers and then he pushes her down onto the carpet, and with that she turns around and he's like choking her, and she manages to like reach up and grab and like twist and squeeze his balls, basically his bits and bobs. Oh, and that in turn like makes him release his grip. Now this is purely my own speculation, but I think he was tired at this point from beating Sandra to death and manhandling her body. Oh, it was a mail bag, a canvas mail bag, not a laundry bag, and putting her body into that. Oh, you know, like that probably took it out of him. And then he's then had to attack his wife because, well, I'm guessing he thought Sandra was his wife. Nasty man. You know, horrible custody battle. I know what I'll do. Let's get her out of the picture. But it wasn't her. It was Sandra, the nanny, who was meant to not be there. Oh, the horror. It's all gone wrong. So I reckon he was just very tired at this point. And, I mean, she's like squeezed his knackers. So I think from what I hear, that is very painful. So the whole thing, like, kind of weirdly, surreally subdued into like a chat, basically. Like, where's the nanny? I don't know. And they were just like pausing. It's like they were pausing because I really do think that he would have just carried on to kill her, but he was like taking a breather and they were just having a chat. So she was trying to convince him to chill. Why don't you stay here and chill out for a bit, and in a few days I will get you out of here. Like I will help you escape, because you're going to get in some serious shit. You've killed the nanny, like come on, and you've tried to kill me. So she was trying to like appeal to his good nature and just say like, let's stop and let's get you out of this mess. Like, don't make it worse. And I'm on your side. I'm going to be good to you. You know, she's like trying to keep him sweet, which is probably for the best, probably clever. One of their children, Frances, I believe, she then appeared at the top of the stairs. Oh, awful. And he then went up the stairs and told her to go back to bed. Phew. Like he didn't hurt her or anything. So one child now gone back up to bed. With this, they go up the stairs themselves, and he like says he's going to help her clear herself up, like she's covered in blood. So he's like, come on, let's sort you out. Like, cheers. Just tried to kill me. Shithead. So that's like the ruse. I reckon he was probably going to run a bath and drown her. I don't know. Like, I think he was probably going to try and finish her off. Purely speculation, but that's what I think he was going to do. He's like, you know, I've come this far. I've killed the nanny. Didn't mean to, but I've done that. I'm in trouble anyway, so I might as well like finish what I came here to do. However, she realised that when he was in the bathroom, like trying to get her some like drugs, paracetamol, whatever, and a washcloth to clean her off, she realised that he was like in the bathroom, he couldn't hear her. I mean, they're great big fancy houses, like he was probably like ages away in a bathroom. And she ran for her life and she escaped. Well done. She then went to a pub called the Plumber's Arms and just, like, witnesses said she just, like, collapsed in a heap. She was bloodied from, like, head to toe. Like, what a sight. Can you imagine that? Oh, no. You know, not nice. So she was all, like, in a panic and she was, like, saying, he's killed the nanny, he's tried to kill me, and that her children, you know, because they were still in the house. The police are called. And obviously, back at home, Lord Lucan returns to the bedroom to realise that she's escaped. She's gone. So he has to get out of there pretty quick. Yes, he does. The police arrive. The police assess the scene. They find the body of Sandra. They find the light bulb has been removed from the bottom of the basement stairs. You know, suspicious. They go and see Veronica in hospital and take her statement because she got taken into hospital in a state, as she would be. She immediately, although she was sedated, identified her husband as her attacker and told the police everything that she knew. Lord Lucan, on the other hand, he was off skis. He hopped in his borrowed Ford, not what he was accustomed to, and now things are starting to fall into place. Do you remember I said that he'd had some interesting conversations with friends and family members when he was drunk and having a difficult time? Those conversations consisted of him saying that everything would be grand and okay if his wife wasn't in the picture. And he would discuss ways in which he would be able to get away with murder, basically. Naughty. And never tell anyone. Silly. One such friend, Greville Howard, he would give a statement to the police saying that Lord Lucan had suggested that by killing his wife it would save him from bankruptcy, and that he would be able to get rid of her body in the Solent and nobody would know and he would get away with murder. So, you know, that was his plan. Carry her out in a mail bag and then dump her body in the river. Okie dokes. Also, the borrowing of this Ford car from his friend a few weeks prior, that starts to make sense too. If you know that you are going to commit a murder, you will not want any evidence of that in your own car. As her husband, you are, or even estranged husband, whatever, I mean 90% of the time it's the partner or the ex-partner, isn't it? You know. So he knew he'd be looked into. He didn't want any evidence of like a body, blood, hair, whatever, mess in his beautiful Mercedes-Benz. Oh no. Or have it seen being near the area or driven about. So he'd obviously thought this through. Purely speculation. Maybe he borrowed the car to do a tip run. I don't know. But in my mind, it pieces it together. When he left the crime scene, they managed to piece together up to a point where Lord Lucan went, where he visited. So he began with the mother of one of his daughter's friends. Okay, so like a family friend, Madeline Florman. He arrived there between 10 and 10:30, which I couldn't quite remember, but between those times, and he was knocking on the door, but she was home alone, so she didn't answer the door. No, sensible. And left it, and then, you know, like, that was the end of that. However, a little bit later on, she received a phone call, and that phone call was just gobbledygook, like incoherent. She had no idea what the person was saying, and it was all like, you know, a bit weird, and probably really scared her. Like, what an evening. When the police arrived at her property to talk to her about this, later on, they found blood on her doorstep, and it was a mixture of A and B, which was the blood types of Veronica and Sandra. So they determined that it was him and he had been there, dripping blood. Lucan then made another phone call between 10:30 and 11 to his mum and, excuse you, and said, go and get the kids, there's been a terrible incident. Dear. So we know that he called her. Oh, she's called a Dowager Countess, his mum. Oh, that's fancy, isn't it? Dowager Countess. Oh, just so, like, royal. I love it. He told Mummy that he'd been driving past Veronica's house, his old house, and seen Veronica having a fight with a man in the basement. Oh, and that he'd gone to intervene. What? Okay. Lord Lucan then drove to Uckfield in East Sussex to visit his friends, the Maxwell Scotts. He there spoke to Susan Maxwell Scotts and had penned 2 letters. These were both addressed to his brother-in-law, Bill Shand Kidd. What is with the name? Bill Shand Kidd. And it was from here that he posted those letters to his London address. He also telephoned Bill to let him know that he'd sent the letters and that they would be there shortly, and for him to go and read them. Now, these letters were also blood-stained, so Bill did hand those in to the police. Let's read the letter, the main letter. Okay. Dear Bill, the most ghastly circumstance arose tonight, which I briefly described to my mother. When I interrupted the fight at Lower Belgrave Street, and the man left, Veronica accused me of having hired him. I took her upstairs and sent Frances up to bed and tried to clean her up. She lay doggo for a bit, and when I was in the bathroom, left the house. The circumstantial evidence against me is strong, in that V will say it was all my doing. I will also lie doggo for a bit, but I am only concerned for the children. If you can manage it, I want them to live with you. And then he names some people that will handle the school fees. V has demonstrated her hatred for me in the past and would do anything to see me accused for George and Francis. To go through life knowing that their father had stood in the dock for attempted murder would be too much. When they are old enough to understand, please explain to them the dream of paranoia and look after them. Yours ever, John. The other letter was about financial matters. There is a sale coming up at Christie's, 27th of November, which will satisfy bank overdrafts. Please agree reserves with Tom Craig. He also holds a life law policy. The other creditors can get lost for the time being. Lucky. That was his nickname. Anything but. Susan Maxwell Scotts was asked why she didn't contact the police straight away when Lord Lucan arrived, and she just said that she didn't see the news or the papers, or she didn't know what was going on. She had no idea. So she was like, oh, I didn't know what was going on, so I didn't say anything. Oh. She just played it dumb. After this, when he left the Maxwell Scotts, he was never seen again. He disappeared spectacularly. He got into the Ford and he drove off, and it was a few days later that Ford was found in New Haven in Norman Road, which is on the coast and is my old hometown, which is what made me really want to do this case. They found this car abandoned there. Something interesting about New Haven is that there is a port, a harbour and a ferry crossing to France. Lots of people speculated that because of the notes that he'd written and the way in which he'd written them, that he had committed suicide and that he had gone there to commit suicide. There was a big search of the downs, the hills, to find his body. Nothing was ever found. It was said that a search was done of the harbour and things like that, but if a body has gone into the water, it would be gone by the time that they were looking for it. Taken out to sea, probably. And I don't think it's long before a body's kind of destroyed by the sea. They never found a body. In the boot of the Ford was a very, very similar lead piping covered in surgical tape that was the murder weapon of Sandra Rivett. But there was no actual proof that it was the same piping or what have you, just very, very similar. Also, a full bottle of vodka. Perhaps, again, speculation, he'd gone there thinking that he would top himself and then saw a ferry coming in. hop on that. Another reason that people believe that he did commit suicide is when they searched his property, his flat, they found his glasses, his wallet, his passport, all at home. So he didn't take any of those things with him for his trip, like if he thought he was going to escape. That was all left at his property. Like I say though, you know, nobody knows what happened to him. He had also written a letter to Michael Stoop, the person whose car he had borrowed for his journeys. He didn't give much information, but he just said, look, I'll be found guilty. Whatever, like there's just too much evidence against me and I will be found guilty, so cheers for the car. All of the blood evidence was a mixture of Sandra Rivett's and Veronica. The pipe that was used in the attacks, both of the ladies' blood was found on that, and hair from Sandra. The blood that was found on the doorstep of his friend was a mixture of both of the ladies' blood, as was the blood found on the letters that he'd written. Just a really bloody, scene, really. He must have been covered himself. When you see the murder scene, there's a lot of blood. It sounds like a very bloody affair. There was a lot of blood from Sandra, and from the sounds of it, Veronica was covered head to toe in her own blood as well, so there was an inquest into Sandra Rivett's death. This took place on the 13th of November in 1974, and during that hearing, Lord Lucan wasn't present, so the defence was difficult. The defence took the stance that Lord Lucan had indeed witnessed an attack in the basement and that some unknown assailant had, in fact, murdered Sandra and attacked Veronica. The light bulb that had been removed at the bottom of the stairs, it meant that looking in to the basement from outside, it would have been very difficult to see anything, and policemen went to the property and they tried to ascertain if it was possible for Lord Lucan to have come across this fight. But the only way that you could see down into the basement to see any attack of any sort in the dim lighting would be for him to basically be on his knees looking in. And that seemed very, very unlikely. So his defence was rubbish, basically. The autopsy showed that Sandra had died from severe blows to her head. Dowager Countess, Lord Lucan's mum, she tried to suggest that Veronica hated Lord Lucan and that basically anything that she said in court should be thrown out because she would say anything to get her beloved son into trouble for this awful crime that was probably committed by somebody else, and that Lord Lucan had actually been there to save the day, rescue everybody, and blah, blah, blah. Okey pokes. Witnesses came forward to say that Sandra, who sadly lost her life that night, was really normally not there on a Thursday. So it was highly unlikely that she was the intended victim of the attack, because anybody that knew her would have expected her to be off that night and not at the property. So it was you were expecting somebody else. You were expecting Veronica to come down the stairs, and you got Sandra. Lucan was found guilty. There was no forced entry. The police officers had basically proved his defence wrong. You know, he couldn't have possibly seen it unless he was laying on the bloody floor outside. Lord Lucan left behind a wake of destruction with many, many, many creditors and debt and all sorts, a big fat mess for his family to sort out. It ended up being paid off through the trusts and the funds, the family money, over a number of years. No death certificate was issued because they never did find his body, and it's still questioned to this day. Did he die? Did he commit suicide? Did he jump off of a cliff, never to be seen again? Or did he escape? I imagine he had friends in high places. After a previous attempt, his son tried to get a death certificate and have his father declared dead. And on the 3rd of February in 2016, that did happen. And he then inherited the title from his father, and he became the 8th Earl of Lucan. The Lucan family, the children and Veronica were hounded by the press. It doesn't sound like it was a very good time. And the children ended up in the custody of an aunt. Veronica recently committed suicide. She was in her 80s and she believed that she had the beginnings of Parkinson's disease, and so she decided to take her own life, and she left none of her epic estate to her 3 children. None of it. It all went to a homeless foundation, which is super nice, but okay, also, like, what about your kids? She hadn't spoken to her children and had been estranged from them for 30 years before her death. So that's sad, but it sounds like it was a troubled family. Something that I read which piqued my curiosity was this story that Lord Lucan had been spotted in Africa, and there are some photographs and sightings of him in Africa, and his children were flown out to Africa twice and went to like a zoo, like a safari out there. And it was said by the executive that booked these flights for his children that this was so that Lord Lucan could watch them and see them from a distance and see how they'd grown. And it's like, wow. Like, in my gut, I kind of, I think that happened. I think he got away with murder. I think he got himself to Africa, and that's where he was until he died. Purely speculation. But what a spicy one. What a spicy one. Effectively, it was a very bitter and horrible custody battle that ended, or should have ended, in the murder of his wife so that he could gain custody of his children. And that's just sad, desperate, what a pickle. Not very nice. And even more sad and horrible and tragic is the fact that he didn't even get it right, and he ended up murdering an innocent woman, like an innocent nanny. It's just, it blows my mind. It does. Really, really, really bad case of wrong place, wrong time. Is that right? What you say? Yeah. Tragic. Awful. Very sad. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of Sin and Tonic. I'm so glad. Testing. I'm so glad that I have done today's video, got the story out there, and I can move on. Happy days. I'm so relieved. I just needed it in the bag and to move forward. I hope you can join me next week for another true crime story and a glass of gin. Bye!